Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants and authors, saving the world with the home garden. And this is a special YouTube premiere where you're going to have the chance to actually write to me during this garden club that is being taught with my friend Brad Fickus here in Los Angeles, California. We're going to inspire you to continue growing, for those of you in a warmer grow zone across America, with planting tips and ideas, as well as pruning tips, as well as fertilizing tips, mulching, and so much more. I hope you enjoy this lesson. And what's so special about this one, in addition to the content, is that you can actually write me live during this 1 hour segment, and I'll be there on the sidelines help answering all of your questions along the way. Looking forward to talking to each of you. Oh, and also, if you have nothing to share, I'd love to hear where you guys are listening from. Please share your city and state or country. I'd love to know where our audience is from, as we've now grown our channel to now over 190,000 subscribers. And we're proud to share that we finally crossed the 20 million view mile mark. And thank you all for your continuous support, awesome recommendations, suggestions, and inspiration that you continue to share with us here on the Ivory Organics YouTube channel from year to year. Good morning, everyone. For those of you that don't know, and I see just a couple of new faces. My name's Charles Malky. I always introduce myself as a biologist and plant expert for our company, Ivory Organic. By 2014, we started our first garden club meeting at my house, and from there we've grown it to a lot of your backyards, and we thank Eileen Peterson and Mike Shapiro for hosting us today. Thank you. And even though this is a pretty small group, usually we've got about an extra 10 more people. But this is an awesome start and a warm, just awesome event for the Hollywood Knolls. I think this is our first get together, even for our monthly board meetings. It's all been Zoom since God knows when. So it's just awesome just to see you guys, shake your hands and get to better know you guys. And for those of you that I haven't met, I'd love to hopefully keep the conversation going after this. Our goal is within the next hour or two, basically discuss some fall gardening tips, which will include fertilizer. Most people don't think about fertilizer now. Pruning, mulching, things you can still be planting. This is an awesome time for actually planting as well here in the warmer climates. I'm also recording this content as well. For those of you that want to see this, I mentioned Ivory Organics, or you can even put in Charles Malky now that most of you guys have my name. You can Google and you should see there's like 400 videos now out there. We now teach an average, just to let you know, I was sharing with a couple of people, on the low end about 5,000, upwards of 40,000 people daily watch our YouTube channel and learn these gardening tips, and then using our products to hopefully grow and experience their best growing seasons. We are on YouTube, just to let you know. We're approaching now 200,000 subscribers. We just surpassed over 20 million views. And it's made us for many years now the #1 garden product YouTube channel in the country too. And none of this would have happened also, but it all started here, which is the cool thing too. And specifically Martha Carr's here. Whenever she's here, it really started in her backyard is when the light bulb went off. But if anybody wants to know more about this story, they can ask me afterwards. And then I'd like to introduce Brad, or actually if you can introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi folks, a lot of you know me. My name is Brad Fickus. I'm a horticulturalist. I've been in the business all the way basically from the 70s when I was 16 years old, and then continued on through the wholesale market. I was involved in landscape architecture and along the lines with wholesale nursery sales and horticultural consultation over the years. So I enjoy what I do because I feel that that plants are a very positive force in the environment, in the sense of providing oxygen, providing beauty, reducing in the urban landscape, reducing heat. So to me, there's nothing I would rather do than be involved with plants, and I think I'm excited just to be here and to talk about it. October is a great time really to look at the landscape, and it's an opportunity. It's a new beginning. You go back to the East Coast. My family's from Pennsylvania originally, and you see the fall color changes. We do have our changes also. Maybe they're not as dramatic, you don't see them as much. We do have, and I'd say here in Southern California, we probably have the greatest cross-section of plants that will grow here than any other area in the United States. And so we can even grow trees from the East Coast. Here they don't do as well because they don't get the cold, but they will survive, and you know, with a little bit of love and care and help, they will do well in your yard. So you just have to, gardening and landscaping it's a practice and a skill that evolves over a period of time, and you have to be aware, you have to be observant when you plant something in your yard, when you're walking around, you have to look for signs. You have to look for signs of if a plant is stressed, or the leaves are being chewed on, or you know, and many times I'll put a plant in my backyard. I have a shady area. I put some coleus in there, and I also put some cymbidium orchids and other plants. The coleus got eaten like within 2 days. They just chewed them down. So I'm not going to use coleus anymore. I'm going to have to use something else. Begonia richmondensis, which is a great shade plant and very floriferous, has a lot of flowers. Put that in there. Works really well. So what I'm trying to say is that it's a never-ending but should be enjoyable practice and activity that you should practice around your yards. The conversation that we're having today is not only about gardening, but it's about landscape as well, because it is, you know, it really, to me, you know, gardening, obviously it's kind of it's a term that can apply to a number of activities, but landscape also to me is a word that we should be using as well. I wanted to focus in on the topics that apply to us here in the Knolls in Southern California, because there are many gardening tips out there for October and for the fall, but they don't necessarily apply to us here. So with that, I'm
going to add one more quick intro. Do any of you guys here eat passion fruits? One? Do you guys know how much these go for in the store on average? No guesses? 50 cents a buck? They're average about $3 to $5 a piece.
Wow.
Yeah, passion fruit. They're one of the most expensive fruits, and they're so easy to grow. I've actually volunteered before COVID at the local homeless shelter here off the 101 and I think like Vine Street, the Evangelist Church, whatever. There, they've got homeless people that come between 12 and 4 or 5, where they feed them, shower them, you know, take care of them, offer them resources. I offered gardening services to them where they can grow their own food. One of the things we did was attach, and I made these passion fruit cuttings from my backyard vine, which started in Florida, which I brought here, because these things only last an average of about 7 years. So I've already been here for 10, and I still have several vines on my property, but the original from Florida just died last year. So that was year 9, but the average is about 7 years, so you got it if you want to enjoy the same fruit and flavors and consistent yields. If it's an awesome performer, which this thing was, you know, from a grower in South Florida, Miami specifically, that I grew on my Palm Beach property and brought it. And I've been sharing on our YouTube channel and showing, you know, cutting it open, tasting it, sharing it, and basically sending cuttings all over the country. But I've got about 4 of these. So I've got like a few cans, a few fertilizers, a few of these. We're gonna do a drawing towards the end. And the first like 9 or 10 names that come up will get to pick their choice between the passion fruit fertilizer and the whitewash. Yes?
What does passion fruit taste like?
So if you've ever had a actually, not that this is a compliment, but fruit punch, which kids might like, is kind of derived off of passion fruit flavor. But any tropical drink you've ever had, if it has like that delicious tropical flavor, it's always got passion fruit. And you can mix it with mangoes and pineapple or anything, or citrus, and it just makes everything have that tropical flavor as passion fruit. But you can maybe try it before you go. If you've got, you know, a knife, you cut it down the middle. I prefer it chilled first. And my kids, even since they're like 1, 2, 3, and 4, even though it's got seeds, you eat it all, and they just go right through it. They love it. A delicious snack. So I've got.
Where is the supply?
So I've got 4 of these. And you just attach it to any chain link fence, anything. It grows. It's got one of the most beautiful flowers. If you Google passion fruit flower, I don't think you'll find a flower more beautiful than passion fruit flower. So they're beautiful, delicious
and
fruit.
they're tasty, yeah.
They're tasty, and we basically attach it at the homeless shelter to a chain link fence, and now it's just a green wall. And behind those leaves, there's a ton of fruit at $5 a piece. So if you want to add your name to this, and then we'll draw it out of the fishbowl towards the end. So here's that. And I think I'm done. I'm going to be on the sideline. Brad's going to take the floor, and whenever he needs me. Actually, the two things I want to quickly share, just in general with fall feeding and fertilizer. When I teach these lessons, most people say like the most important time of the year for fertilizing a plant is spring, because everybody's going in their garden and planting and then fertilizing. But the number one most important time of the year to actually be feeding your plants is like summer. The light hours are peaking, the warmth, the plant's metabolism is peaking. You got to make sure you're feeding your plants in the summer. But as we're entering fall, this is now another important time to maybe not feed your plants as much as you would in the summer. But I usually take the back of the fertilizer, label and do about half that, because the plant's metabolism is slowing down. So you feed your plants about half as much, and that'll get them through the winter months better than if they're not fed. Because in the winter months, some people want to feed her, they see their leaves turning yellow. The plants don't uptake nutrients as well in the winter months as they will right now. So this is an important fertilizer month, even though we're in the fall. That's tip number one. And tip number two I want to share with you before I pass the floor. When it comes to pruning your trees, and I know for Eileen and I know Tree, we're looking at Barham Boulevard and those jacaranda trees and so forth. They usually get butchered right around now, and they look butchered for about 6 months after they do it because of timing. Here we are now in the month of October. Plant metabolism is again slowing down and won't turn again for us here in Los Angeles until late January, and that first week of February is kind of our spring. After that last chance of frost passes your grow zone, that's when your plants are going to start waking up. So if you time the pruning towards the slowdown, which is late January, first week of February, you'll notice you'll prune and you'll see the growth a week or two later, and the healing will start happening right away. So those are two helpful tips I want to share with you just in general in fall care. And with that, the floor is yours, Brad.
All right, thank you. So again, back to what we're talking about. I could talk for hours, but we want to hit the important points. And again, related to October and all the way through the winter time. So we're calling this our fall gardening session. So I want to talk a little bit about planting, what's good to plant at this point in time. We're going to talk about a little bit about pruning. Charles has touched on it, but we'll go into a little bit further. Fertilization and what some varieties at this point in time can use probably more fertilizer than others can, and we'll just touch on that briefly. I can't go through all of them, but certainly we'd like to talk about it. We want to talk about mulching, and then finally we want to talk about irrigation at this point, just because it's the season's changing. Transpiration rates are down with the plants. They don't uptake and give off as much moisture, and so for that reason you don't really need you can turn your sprinkler system down. So let's talk about planting a little bit. Here in the Southland, there are plenty of places to get natives, help me out here. That's the native nursery out the end.
Yeah, Theodore Payne.
Theodore Payne, okay. There's plenty of native nurseries out there, and natives make a great addition to larger lots where you're planting against the edge. So Ceanothus is a good one. Mimulus, Toyon. These are names that they're just Latin names that I'd be happy to give to you later on, but they are long-lasting plants in the landscape. This is a good time to, now moving in through the winter, is a good time to plant natives. And natives they're beneficial to most any landscape here in the hills, because they bring in wildlife, they encourage good soil biology, and they're beautiful if they're planted correctly, and you're using the right irrigation. Natives are pretty fussy. They can, if you're not watering them correctly, if you have soil that could be on the heavy clay side, you may want to amend the soil a little bit, and you may want to adjust your irrigation so you're not watering as much. And I'd say with most natives, you want to start off with a drip irrigation. That makes sense. If you have larger areas, that may not be practical to do drip irrigation, but it's a good time to put natives in all the way now through early winter, I would say, which is a good time to do it. So I would encourage that. Secondly is, does anybody have any like areas that are bare that they want to add some color to? You know, like an empty lot or a side strip in their yard. If you do, I would consider sowing with wildflower seeds. This is a good time to do it before the rains come. So it's you can actually you can buy one of those spreaders, and you can go to the local garden center and buy the mix. It has California poppies in it. It has lupin in it. It has a lot of the natives, and it's a nice. It's believe me, in the springtime when it comes through, if we get a good rain, it's a really nice show. And it's a great. I wouldn't do your entire lot with it, but maybe some areas that are not being used currently. They make a good addition.
Do you have to till the soil first?
You could lightly, but as far as soil preparation goes, if your soil is okay, you really don't have to prepare it. But it would help to kind of scarify, to take a rake over the top of the seed, at least just to get it covered at some point in time, so that the birds don't get it. But it's wait until it gets a little bit cooler before the rainy season. But you want to catch the problem is that people want to, many times they think about the wildflowers once the rainy season is here. You want to do it beforehand, and they're used to just sitting around and without any rain for months. So I love wildflowers. I think it's a great thing to do. I've done it before along our driveway, and we had California poppies for a while. We just have to stay on top of that. So I think that's a great option. Bulbs. Has anybody here planted bulbs recently or used them? Yeah. Bulbs are actually pretty neat because they can actually provide unreal color. I mean, just brilliant color. I mean, we're talking gladiolus, we're talking tulips, amaryllis. Yep. Daffodils. There we go. There's one. I just got a case that came in with tulips in it and daffodils, and it's a nice surprise element in the landscape. So if you have an area like a planting bed, and it's an area that you can that you're able to maintain, and you don't have too many plants growing over that's going to crowd the bulbs, or even containers. You can do tulips, you can do daffodils in containers. Gladiolus need to go into the ground, but they are. This is a great time right now. The spring flowering bulbs are coming out. Some of the bulbs, like tulips, need to be chilled. So you can either check on the package to see if they were pre-chilled, or you put them in the refrigerator for about 4 weeks. So, and like I said, it's incredible, the colors. I've had it before, and you've got the tulips that come up at one time, the daffodils that come up at another, gladiolus, and if you time it correctly, you can have a real show in your garden. And that's, it's something I've done for years and really like it. I'm going to pass around. I have a chart on bulbs that I'm going to pass around so you guys can take a look at it. It tells when they bloom, and it just gives you kind of a sort of a quick rundown of the names and how tall they grow and when they bloom, just to give you an idea of what's out there. And if you have more questions on it, you could probably go to your Armstrong Garden Center and talk to them there. They'll probably have bins out there right now that you can that they'll be happy to show you and sell you some bulbs. So that's pretty much, that's about as much as I'll go on bulbs. You can do your research, and the one thing about bulbs though is that you definitely want to plant them 3 times the depth of the size of the bulb itself. So, given if the bulb is an inch, on some of these bigger ones, 3 inches down or 5 inches down, and at the very bottom of it, you want to put Ivy Organics fertilizer, because they need it. They want something. They want a slow release. They want they love the phosphorus, and the nitrogen helps out too. So you put that basically once you dig the hole. If you put a little bit, like maybe a teaspoon, would you say, Charles? Yeah. At the bottom, and you mix it up, and you put the bulb directly on top there. Cover up and just wait. Let it bake for a while, and then you'll be come springtime. If you time it correctly and you plant correctly, you're gonna have a nice show. So it's something easy to do. You can put them in pots. You can put them at your front step, at your entrance. You can put them into terracotta pots, and they look fantastic. Plant some alyssum, let them pop through.
I'm gonna jump in on bulbs real quick.
Sure.
Has anyone here attempted to plant bulbs and had critters under the ground eat them before they ever grew?
I have critters eat the tall stem getting ready to pop the dinner plate.
Oh no. So you're
That's
losing your
when
flower.
I use the safer repellent.
Yeah. and that keeps them off.
Yeah, but the regular bulbs, so I have critters eating everything, but they don't do the bulbs.
I know with people that have moles, voles, or gophers, there's people that are planting their bulbs and it's just like a sweet carbohydrate treat under the ground for these guys. One of the things, and I don't know if it's going to be now or later, I'm thinking later, this Ivory Organics can, which is one of the 3 prizes towards the end, and this is actually one of our best-selling products, is it basically offers protection from sunburn if you put it on the tree, and then insects, and then there's the rodents on the back. But you can basically coat the bulbs with this product before you plant it. And what it does, just to let you know, the active ingredients in here are castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. Anti-rodent oils would include castor as well as the mint. So the peppermint, spearmint, when it's on the bulbs, and the base powders that basically kind of hold on like paint, but it's not paint, it's Armory certified, listed, so it's for organic gardening, so it won't contaminate your soil as with putting paint in your garden. But you can basically coat the bulbs, let it dry out for about 20 minutes, and then plant it. And now they're basically gopher, mole, vole proof.
For how long?
Well, once you coat it, it's basically on the plant for anywhere from about 3 to 9 months. But the point is, by that point, the plant's already growing. So at least, again, that bulb isn't eaten. So that's a helpful tip, and it's actually on the back right there in red in fine print about bulb care as well. So, yeah.
Excellent. Some bulbs will naturalize. Most of them, in my experience, the ones that I've used, like gladiolus, will naturalize. Daffodils have come back year after year for me. Tulips won't. They basically, you're supposed to dig them up and put them in the refrigerator, and I just, unfortunately, I don't have the time to do that. So I just go, I buy them again and buy a different color and see if I like that instead. So again, you can, if you want, you can take a shot with your smartphone of that that's being passed around and look into it a little bit further. Again, this is the time of year to plant. This is the best time of year to plant, October through the winter time. So that would include trees, shrubs, perennials. It's an excellent time to plant. What I would do is that, many times we were talking earlier about you have a spot in your yard that you want that's empty, you want to fill it. Most of the folks here, I'm sure, have their houses and their landscapes established, but they might want to do some changes. So what I would say in a case like that is do some research. The Sunset Western Garden book is a great place to look. So it's important if you're going to, number one, you identify the area that you want to plant. Number two, get an idea of what you want planted in there. Are you looking for a flowering tree? Are you looking for more of a hedge? Are you looking for low growing color? And then and just keep going down that road, because it's landscaping is as you two gentlemen know, has to take into a lot of things. It has to take in the design of the house that you're landscaping. Has to take in colors, form, texture, adaptability. Does it fit? Is it going to take the sun? I mean, does it need shade? Does it need sun? You have to take all these things into account when you're planting. So that would apply for most of the shrubs, and the trees. There's not too many trees and shrubs that I would say that you wouldn't want to plant in the winter time, in the late spring, or I'm sorry, late fall and into the winter time. But what I would do is I'd be very careful not to fertilize them too much, because you don't want to encourage new growth that can get frost. But the idea is that right now, if you get your plantings in October, November, December, the plant gets a chance to be able to start putting roots out, and then come springtime, late spring, they start pushing out new leaves, and they've already got like a hand up on the season. And so that's really what you want to do. Is that I always look at when I'm talking about, I work with olive trees and palm trees, and the one thing that I look at is, recently that we've been suggesting is a lot of hormones and stimulants for the plants, because you want those roots to get out there as quick as possible. If you don't strengthen the tree right away, and this is, like I said, this is a great time of year to put a plant in, and we just went out of the stress of summertime. It's gonna, if the roots don't go out right away, it could develop, they're not gonna be taking the water up, and you could develop anaerobic conditions where bacteria can live down there, pathogens and fungus can live down there and kill the tree. So that's why it's so important to give the plant, give the tree plant all the chance that it can to go ahead and establish itself. Thus, this is a good time of year to do that. Okay, and that's like I said, that's an overview of trees, shrubs, and perennials, and there's it's a matter of what really appeals to you and what will work. Okay, let's talk about bare root fruit trees and roses. Come December, you're gonna see them come into Lowe's. You'll see them come into Armstrong Garden Center and some of these other outlets, and that's a great opportunity to be able to get a fruit tree that normally, if you bought it in a 15-gallon, which they put it into right away, it would cost you a lot more, and it would be heavier, and it would be more difficult for you to install. So bare root season's great if you're trying to get a specific fruit tree or a specific deciduous plant, or roses. If you want to plant roses, it's a great time also. They sell them in bins. I think it's right around December, at the beginning of December is when you first start seeing them, and then it'll go through January. It's the same kind of process as planting planting containerized plants. You want to find a good location, full sun. If you have a problem with soil, with the fruit trees, you want to amend the soil. Use a good planting mix. It's important with a lot of people will take shavings from their neighbor. Their neighbor has some trees, have the trees cut down. They're eucalyptus trees. They have a lot of tannin in them, and then they use it for planting, or they use it as a mulch, which is a big no-no. I would say look around a little bit when you're shopping for a good planting mix that incorporates. Take a look at the ingredients, but with a coarser mix, you're going to have more air penetration, and you're going to have better water flow through the soil. So that's important. You can also, when you're putting in the bare roots, you can also use a fertilizer like Ivory Organic and mix that into the soil, the backfill as well. But it's there's a whole process behind planting them. You want to many times you'll want to prune back the bare root trees because you want to promote good growth on the scaffold or on the canopy. You'll want to cut back the roots also. They have instructions when you plant them originally, and then create a tree well and just keep an eye on them. Like I said, it's a great way to get some fruit trees in your yard inexpensively and the varieties that you want. Whereas if you go out to a retail nursery later, they may not have the varieties that you need, and so December is a time to start looking for that.
Brad, rule of thumb, would you guess a foot a year? How on a fruit tree, what would you imagine the growth to be?
Well, on like a standard fruit tree, a full-size fruit tree, you could. I mean, I think a foot and a half might be realistic. 2 feet, just depending on what what you're looking at. Looking at a lot of the vertical growth, but that's optimistic when you get up to 2 feet. The dwarf varieties are going to stay smaller and they're going to stay more compact, and that's a good point. Also, is that with citrus and also with bare root, you need to choose. You need to be sure: is this a semi-dwarf that I'm getting, or just a regular full-size tree? It's going to affect, obviously, the tree might get much larger than you need, or it may not get big enough. So just always be aware that there's both. These days, when you're buying citrus, most of the time it's semi-dwarf that's out there that they're selling, because they know that the general public doesn't want full-size trees like we're out in the orchards out here in the valley years ago. So. Do what? I'm sorry. You could put a hormone. I mean, but what I do is I actually put Super Thrive. I'm not pitching for Super Thrive, but I'll soak the roots in Super Thrive right before I plant it. And Super Thrive has a hormone in it. They don't say what it is, but Dr. Thompson actually used to drink it, and on TV or on his commercials, and say, "See, I can drink it; it's safe." But then I saw an article come out saying it causes cancer. So you just don't know, right? But he lived to be 101 or something like that. So I guess the Super Thrive worked, right? But yes, I would dip it in a bucket of water along with, in the old days they used B1, and you probably know B1 really isn't effective. It's a little bit of, really what the plants benefit from is a little bit of nitrogen, But those hormones also help because they like an you're familiar with IBA, right? Indole 3-butyric acid. You mix that into the soil, and it pushes root growth pretty quickly. So I would say that's definitely, you could do both. You could dip it into Super Thrive or something similar, and then put a hormone type product in the soil as well. Sure thing. Let's talk about vegetables and herbs. I have a chart here on vegetables and herbs. This is a great time actually to take a look at vegetables and herbs. Here you go, Bob. Because they are, we've gotten out of summertime. In the summertime, you really can't grow many vegetables. It's difficult to do that. They just don't like the heat for the most part. So you have to wait until the summer heat backs off, and you can go. For those that are bold and are ambitious, you can plant them by seed. But it's just as easy to go into the garden center and buy them in 6-packs, buy them at 4-inch. You would have to be really dedicated to actually to go through and sow them by seed, because you have to keep track of them. They don't always work out right away. It's much easier to do that. So I mean, I say, you can do, starting now, you can do lettuce, you can do peas, you can do parsley, spinach, onions. You can get the onions and the garlic also from the small bulbs that they sell in the store, as well as potatoes. It really depends on the space that you have, and how much time you want to devote to it. Many times they make some of the smaller growing vegetables that you can, like the little cucumbers that you can put into a pot and grow into a pot and grow up on a trellis. But this is a good time to really look at vegetables. And again, that chart I'm passing around, you can get it on the internet, or you can take a picture of it. This is the time to jump in. That's what I'm telling you. Herbs are out there too. There's a lot of herbs. So if you're a whiz in the kitchen and you're a culinary expert, maybe having some oregano, having some thyme, having some tarragon on the outside of the kitchen area in pots in the full sun, that might be a good thing to have also. And this is the selection is pretty good right now. So then the final thing would be the cold season lawns. I don't know how many people these days still seed their lawn over, but this is the time to start thinking about seeding your lawn with some of the cold season that you can buy in seeds. Some of the bluegrass, and then put a topper over it. So I kind of put that at the last because I don't think it's that important to people these days. I myself have a beautiful lawn, but it's synthetic. So it's no water, no pesticides. It looks great. It's looked good for the last 10 years, and so it works for me. But some people, and I like it too, the feel of the grass between your feet when you're walking out on your lawn. We obviously have to worry about these days about the water restrictions and along those lines. So thus I don't have a problem if somebody wants to have actual sod in their yard, a fescue, or they want to have synthetic. It just depends on the quality of the synthetics of the synthetic lawn as far as how it's going to look with the overall product, the overall finished landscape. So we're talking a little bit earlier about mulching. Mulching is important, and mulching is good to do any time of the year. It really is. When I mulch, many times I use my own compost. Now, I know that a lot of people are not that ambitious to make compost. It's a dedication. You have to stay on it all the time. You have to mix the compost. You have to put in the right ingredients and layer it. We call it the lasagna method, where you put kitchen scraps, you put a layer of leaves, you put like maybe paper products that are torn up, another layer of kitchen scraps, and then you just turn it over, and then it breaks down. It has tremendous results. I'm a big fan of composting, and someday I'll try that worm composting, the vermiculture too. But
I've done that.
yeah, but I just, there's only so much you can do. But mulching is important for the landscape, especially the areas that are around the house that you can get to. I mean, up there on the hill, I wouldn't expect that you should mulch that. You just, it's just too far away from the house, and it's not practical. But in and around these areas, you can mulch, and there's a lot of advantages to doing it. And you can mulch pretty much any time of the year. One of the big advantages is it's a weed suppressant. It keeps the weeds down. You don't have to spray for weeds as much. Occasionally one will sneak through, but for the most part, if you have a good layer of mulch on there, it suppresses the weeds. Second is maybe not so much right now, but in the summertime, it retains the water, so you're not using as much water. It cuts down on water use. Third thing is that actually it creates, if it's a good mix of compost or mulch, then you're actually going to get nutrients that leach down into the root zone and help the tree out. Another good reason for mulch is that it actually promotes the good bacteria that Pac-Man, the fungi, the pathogens in the soil. And so many times what you're doing is you're strengthening the tree or the plant that you put the mulch on by putting in those fighters, the pathogen fighters in the soil, the beneficial bacteria. I mean, there's a lot of research these days on mycorrhizae and beneficial bacteria, and mulch definitely is right up there as far as one way to get beneficial bacteria into the soil. And then it can look pretty if you have the right mulch. It can be a nice look. Yes, Mike.
Where do you get the worms to put in your compost?
You have to. There's a
place in Ventura called the Worm Concern.
Yeah.
And it's shipped in a 5-gallon box.
They're African red crawlers. That's what they're called.
They're creepy.
Redwood,
Yeah.
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 Very
But
wiggly.
but the thing is you can, Mike, if you do it right, you can actually take the worms out, and you can put them. And once the compost is created, you can take that compost. And the compost is actually pretty. It's pretty strong. It's very helpful to the plants. You can so the liquid that's left over, you can take that and spray it on your plants, and it's good for pest control as well. Like it's a natural pest control. I used to take the worms when I was doing it and feed them to my chickens. So then it kind of went. They had some of them, not all of them. So it's the cycle of life. Yeah, they just keep going. It just keeps going along, keeps giving. So. But as far as those are the main reasons for mulching. If you're getting, like I said before, if you're getting mulch from somebody from a source, let's say a tree trimmer, make sure that it's got some diversity to it. It can't be all eucalyptus, it can't be all pine. It should be a mix, and don't mix it directly into the soil. Just put it on the top and let it age there, because if you have too many, you can have tannins in some varieties of trees. It's better that you have a mix. Or I wouldn't use it. I just pass on it.
Brad, do you have an opinion on the compost that the city gives away?
It's good. It's very good. Yeah. You and I have been to those workshops. They do a great job. They give it away out here at Lopez Canyon for free.
Yeah, you're all familiar that you can go and fill up as much as you want compost. There's a bunch of different locations around the city.
Travel Town is one of them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And they do age it. I mean, they're basically taking trimmings and mixing it with and letting it age, and they process it real nicely, and it's a freebie. A lot of people are worried about pesticides, but they do so much leaching of it. They're washing out a lot of the chemicals that were in there to start with. So it's a great opportunity. The only thing is there's not some guy sitting there waiting to help you out, like, hey, pull up, let me load you up. You have to go up there with a shovel and bags. So, but if you can get past that, it's free. So it's thanks for bringing that up, John. So we talked about that. Let's talk about pruning a little bit, okay? And I'm sure Eileen has some ideas on pruning as well. There's two different subjects as far as pruning goes. One has to do with larger landscape trees. That's why I say landscape and gardening. Landscape, I'm thinking more big scale. That if you get to a certain point, like I had a client that I was working with that had a bunch of oak trees, big old California oak trees. Well, oak trees like to be trimmed in August. It's just like, really? It's just, that's when California live oaks, at that time, they stop growing. And it's just, when I looked into it, that's, that you just have to be aware. You would think it would be in the wintertime, but that's when they shut down the majestic California coastal oaks. Pine trees and conifers, they shut down in the wintertime when it gets cool, because you don't want to cut into a tree and have the sap run and open up, create a pathway for pests, and that's what you possibly can do. Some of these deciduous trees, you want to wait until they've dropped all their leaves so that they're able to take the food supply out of the leaves and back into the tissues. So it's really important. I think that, you know, as far as pruning goes, pruning it can be for a number of reasons. Landscape pruning, it can be for safety, you know, for if a limb is possibly going to come down and fall in your driveway in your car or somebody. It can be done for aesthetics, just because you want it to look better. It could be done just because there's cross branches where the branches will grow over the other branches. Like on this oak job, they had a lot of cross branches, and that's not good. It's not good for the trees because it can, over a period of time, it can put too much stress. Then you have a major branch that cracks down. So bottom line is you need to have an arborist come and take a look at it. And I get maybe two or three recommendations or from friends, and have them come out and you know, apples for apples, just so you can see. But it's there's an R2 tree trimming, and you want a good you know, at the end of the day, you want the tree to have a good structure and sculpture when they're done pruning it, and that's important. Some guys are better than others. Some just hack it. So anyway, that's the first type of pruning. The second type is just basically pruning around your yard, and that could be, I mean, it could be brambles that you have growing. This is a good time to cut back blackberries, raspberries. It's also roses. Roses are, this is, you know, when it comes up December, and when roses drop all their leaves, many times people cut them right to the ground, and they'll mulch them at the same time. And that's what roses like. They like to be fed, they like to be mulched. With citrus trees, you can pretty much prune them any time of year. You're pruning with the citrus. You're not really pruning to increase production necessarily. You're pruning more because it's growing in a way you don't want it to. Maybe it's growing into a pathway. You're trying to keep a certain look, and so it's more for cosmetics. That's been my experience. It may affect the fruiting. I don't know. It may put more of a bloom count on it, but that hasn't been my experience. So that's another reason why you prune. Also, fruit trees. You're going to prune the stone fruit. Many times, you know, you're cutting back because you want to invigorate. Some trees respond well if you prune them back. You're invigorating them, because what you're doing is you're sending it's a signal that goes to the plant when you cut back that particular terminal bud, and you're cutting back, and it's sending a message to the tree that it needs to push out more growth because it's been injured. And so many times that will help invigorate a tree by doing pruning. You know, that's one method that arborists will try at times when they have a tree that's not responding well. So there's a number of different reasons why you would prune, and like I said, there's pruning that's done by the arborist, and there's pruning that you can do around your yard. And fall is, with some varieties, is a good time to do it, because pruning encourages new growth on plants that are frost sensitive. You don't want to prune them as you go into the fall and winter time, because you don't want to push out new growth. It's because then they're subject to frost damage. So it's you know, it's kind of like not fertilizing too much. I mean,
Can you prune any California oak? Which is the one that is,
you can prune a California oak in August.
but are you allowed?
I would think so. I mean, I haven't checked into the regulations here, I'll be honest. The job I was working on was over in Pasadena. And the person that was doing it was a licensed arborist, so he may have gotten the certification, but I would be lying to you if I told you I knew the answer. I know for sure you can't take one down and to the ground, but I think you can prune them. I think you'd be able to prune them, at least.
What about pruning and fertilizing camellia bushes? And getting very spindly, and I think it's because they're not getting enough water, it's very clay soil.
Right. I mean, the camellias are very. Do you have japonicas or sesanquas?
I don't know, they've been in there so many years, I can't remember. But
Yeah.
they're looking
They like to be fed. Camellias like to be fed. They like to be fed an acid food.
okay.
So-
What time of year is it now? Or is
I would, because they're going to start pushing out buds soon, and so this would be a good time. This would be a good time
It's
to.
they're on a hillside, so it's hard to get the fertilizer to stay without running off. Obviously,
you might want to dig a well around it and apply it that way, and slow water it just to get it into the root zone. But yes, I mean, camellias are heavy feeders, and they like acid soil, which we don't have here.
Okay.
So you have to make some adjustments. Okay. So we've covered pruning, and
But you don't prune them, right? Or do you prune?
you could prune them to shape. I mean, it's more along those lines. I don't know, you know. They've
lost a lot of leaves. They're
Uh-huh.
just very spindly, so I don't know if
It might encourage them.
Camellias.
Yeah.
So your camellias are gonna start blooming in the next like 30 to 60, 90 days, right? So I would be cautious on the pruning, but again, as Brad was mentioning, kind of like with citrus, the goal is you're trying to maintain the shape, structure. One of the things similar to citrus too is to never take pruners to it, because you're pretty much probably gonna shave off a lot of the buds and the blooms too. So you're gonna go in with your hand pruners and carefully select, as kind of all of us here. I mean, when it comes to gardening, you're an artist also. You're designing the shape, you're designing the look, you're designing the height. And one of the things discussed earlier in regards to growth, as Tree was mentioning, like how much growth can I expect? Obviously, it depends on, as Brad mentioned, the root that it is on. If I've got a dwarf ponderosa lemon, so it's the biggest of the lemons, but it's only 2 feet tall, and it only grows a matter of inches a year, not noticeable. But I've also planted an Eureka lemon on a standard rootstock, and it's growing about 6 to 10 feet a year, because it wants to get to 20 to 30 feet tall fast. But my favorite, and again, the way most citrus are sold, is semi-dwarf rootstock, which means you can easily prune it to about 3 feet tall. And I keep most of my semi-dwarf, citrus at about 6, even though they might want to reach 8 to 10. But they'll never go to 20 and 30 because they're semi-dwarf rootstock.
Right.
Will the camellias force more leaf growth if they're pruned a little bit, or because they're so without leaves?
I've got an answer for that one too. So in general, when it comes to pruning, another just general tip is, as you've seen some trees have dead branches within the structure, there's similarly dead roots happening below the ground too, whether it be gophers, moles, or just natural death. The overall health of the tree is best, again in general, when the structure above the ground is smaller than the base of the roots. So by pruning it and making sure that above ground structure is smaller, you'll end up with something that is stronger, more secure. The overall performance of it will be better if it's got a stronger, better foundation. So almost all my trees, regardless of what it is, are pruned at least 10%. But figs, apricots, certain other trees, you can prune them by as much as 70 to 80% annually, and you'll actually result with more fruit by taking them back that hard. So there's some things that need to be pruned in order to have maximum and the best fruit set. So that's that. Two other things I want to quickly share is on pruning. A lot of products out there are tar-based, latex-based pruning seals. And if you research, you can just Google this on, I want to put some tar or latex paint on my roses after I prune them, or my fruit trees after I've cut them, to basically seal those pruned areas. And as Brad was mentioning, assuming you got the timing right now, specifically for that tree, if they're bleeding and stuff, obviously you're creating it, and even if they're not bleeding, it's an entryway for pathogens, whether it be bacteria, virus, or even pests, beetles and termites, to enter those wounds. To put latex and tar-based products on living structures will result in rot. Tar and latex products trap moisture. I'm now doing the pitch for Ivory Organics. The Ivory Organic 3-in-1 plant guard that some of you guys are going to win. When you use it, it basically dries on porous. So it allows the exchange of moisture and nutrients to pass, resulting in a healthier seal while still keeping disease and pests from entering. So that was one of the benefits of the product when it was created. Then the other thing too, when it comes to feeding your plants, there's a lot of organic fertilizers out there, and we talked about making sure you're using low dose nitrogen in the fall, because you don't want your plants really pushing out too much growth going into the winter. Because again, the weather is just going to get more harsh. Summer is one stress for the plant and winter is the other, even though they're not too stressed here in the Southern California climate. But still, for us that spend a lot of time in the garden, which I know most of you here do, you do see the difference. Like for us, I feel like I'm experiencing winter in my garden. I see the shade, I'm on a particular part of the hillside. that gets 3 months of shade now, you know, so my planting, you know, with the things I can do is limited now, but there's still plenty to do. But when it comes to feeding your plants, there's a lot of organic fertilizer choices, which again feeds the soil. Someone mentioned, you know, the benefits of having mycorrhiza, that whole fungal network, which helps strengthen the roots and that whole beneficial life within the soil. If you're doing synthetic fertilizers like that stuff that's neon blue, or just again any of those, you know, the lawn 10-10-10 fertilizers, those things, aside from being synthetic and contaminate, you know, with runoff water, your rivers, lakes, and streams, and our ocean, it also harms that soil biology network as well, and is doing nothing to feed the worms that we were talking about earlier, not doing anything to feed the beneficial bacteria and that mycorrhizal network, which whenever you guys see a mushroom, for example, on your property, one mushroom can span hypha roots that run about 1,000 feet. So one little mushroom, little plant in your garden can actually network, moving water and nutrients among all the plants, one of them in your whole garden. So that's, again, another living thing that's happening below the soil, which again, with good mulching practices and stuff, can help foster the maximum amount of life within that topsoil of your garden. The Ivory organic fertilizers, again, unlike most organic fertilizers out there, give your plants all 6 plant macronutrients. Most of us that know a little bit about fertilizers know about NPK for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. But if you Google what are plant macronutrients, which are the nutrients the soil should have in abundance, the Ivory Organics all-purpose fertilizers, which some of you guys are going to win today, give your plants all 6 of them, which basically makes us 1 out of, like, I'd say 95% or more don't have all 6 plant macronutrients, and that was the reason we brought that to market as well. So that's a little bit about us, and I know we're close in time, but if you want to conclude for us.
Sure, I can wrap up pretty quickly.
There you go.
So back to fertilizing. This is probably the last time right now in October, mid-October is probably the last time of the year that you actually want to fertilize your landscape. And if you're working with citrus or avocados, subtropicals, you want to go with a very low nitrogen fertilizer, you know, but generous amounts of phosphorus and potassium. Because that's there again, they will continue to with the root growth and also the stem growth. So and you can treat your other shrubs the same way. Other shrubs and trees, you can fertilize them, but this would be the last time. No heavy nitrogen. I would say more of a slow release would be the way to go. But it really is important if you can right now to go ahead and apply a low nitrogen fertilizer. Just so that they have the chance that these plants, you know, I mean, the citrus is going through a process. It's kind of sort of shutting down a little bit for the wintertime, but then it's going to get ready on the back end. And, you know, when it comes springtime, they're going to do bloom set, and they're going to put in, you know, they're just finishing up on the fruit, at least from my own citrus in my yard. The fruit are just starting to turn a little bit. They're green, but you know, for the flower set and for the fruit set in the springtime, you want to make sure that the trees are healthy and that they're able to respond. So I would say this is probably the last time you could do it. It may not hurt doing it another time, but I think it's better just to be careful and just you know, stop at this point mid-October. Want to talk a little bit about irrigation. As the days start to cool down, you want to start watching your timers and your clocks and shut down accordingly. For a couple of reasons. Number one is you don't need to water as much, and so why pay for it? The rates that the DWP is charging these days is incredible. And then secondly is you get too much water in the soil, and it will encourage pathogens. So there's a couple good reasons not to overwater at this point. So I'd say as the days start cooling down, go to your clock, go to your timer. If you don't understand it, have your gardener explain it to you or read about it online and adjust accordingly. And it's a good time. It's a good time to think about this, and you should all year round. You know, as it gets warmer, you know, and there's really, you know, there's going to be a heat wave. There's a terrible heat wave coming on. Run out there to the timer, set your time up, and just to cover the plants through that time period. Finally, I'm just going to talk about what we call integrated pest management, IPM. It's a fancy word. Integrated pest management means basically what it means is looking at a landscape or even a commercial like a farm, and having in place a system to work with any existing pests or preventing any pests coming on board. And that could be use of organic pesticides or herbicides. It could be also include synthetics. But the whole idea is it's just more of a mindset, because what you're doing is, like I said earlier, you walk out, you stroll through your garden every once in a while. If you see something's off, you see some leaf chewing on the leaf, or you see it's going off color, maybe that's what the plant's doing this time of year. But if there's leaf chewing on there, maybe you go out and you get what's called spinosad, which is considered an organic pesticide, and you spray that on the leaves, and that could treat, or neem oil, and that possibly could rid the plants of the leaf chewers. Bottom line is just stay observant for your plants. I mean, they for the most part, they'll tell you if there's something wrong, maybe by the plants wilting a little bit, by the color of it, by the fact that it's not growing, and put your detective hats on, and do work that way. It's fun, and at the same time, you can head a lot of these problems off at the pass before they actually become big problems. So that's pretty much it for today. It's just, like I said, I wanted to cover what I thought were the important topics here in the area. There's so many more things we could talk about, but it's some of the items that I brought up it's food for thought for you to think about, maybe look into a little bit further. Thank you very much for coming.
I hope you've enjoyed this educational lesson brought to you by Ivory Organics, and if so, quickly give us that thumbs up. Also, if you can, please share us with your gardening friends and family. And for those of you that are new, please take the moment to subscribe and hit that push bell notification to stay connected with all of our educational content as soon as it's made available. And then, as always, keep growing with Ivory Organics, and wishing you all happy gardening.